In the grand architecture of global geopolitics, we tend to focus on the giants, nations with sprawling territories, massive populations, and industrial might that shapes continents. But tucked away in the corners of Europe, the Caribbean, and the Pacific are the anomalies, microstates. These are nations like San Marino, Tuvalu, and the Vatican City, places where the entire population could fit inside a mid-sized football stadium. To the casual observer, they look like historical accidents or tourist curiosities, but their existence raises a profound question. In an era of global superpowers and massive economic blocs, how do these tiny entities actually function? The reality is that being a microstate isn't just about having a small map. It's about navigating a jurisdictional and administrative tightrope that larger nations never have to consider. Take the concept of sovereignty. For a country like France or Japan, sovereignty is backed by a military and a massive tax base. For a microstate, sovereignty is a commodity. It is something to be leveraged, traded, and carefully guarded. Without the land for agriculture or the space for heavy industry, these nations have had to get creative. They operate on a different set of rules, often turning their small size into a competitive advantage by becoming specialized hubs for finance, digital residency, or international diplomacy. Consider the logistics of daily life. In a standard nation, the government manages everything from national defense to local trash collection. In a microstate, those lines are often blurred or outsourced entirely. Many of these nations don't have standing armies. They rely on protection treaties with their larger neighbors. San Marino relies on Italy, Monaco on France, and Liechtenstein on Switzerland. This creates a strange administrative hybrid where a country is fully independent on paper, but functionally integrated into the infrastructure of a neighbor. They use their neighbor's currency, their neighbor's postal routes, and often their neighbor's electrical grid. However, this reliance comes with a loss of autonomy that can be frustrating for residents. Just as the citizens of Washington, D.C. struggle with federal oversight, residents of microstates often find their local policies dictated by the whims of the giant next door. If the European Union passes a regulation on banking transparency, a microstate like Andorra has very little choice but to comply, or risk being frozen out of the markets that keep it alive. They are sovereign, yes, but their sovereignty exists only as long as it doesn't significantly inconvenience the powers surrounding them. To survive, microstates have become the ultimate opportunists. In the 20th century, this often meant becoming tax havens. By offering lower rates than their neighbors, they could attract billions in foreign capital. But as global pressure on tax havens has increased, they've had to pivot again. Today, we see microstates leading the charge in digital frontiers. Estonia, while not a microstate in the traditional sense, pioneered the e-residency model that many smaller nations are now copying. Others, like Tuvalu, have funded a significant portion of their national budget simply by licensing their country code top-level domain, TV, to tech companies and streamers. But there is a darker side to this fragile existence. Because they lack a diversified economy, microstates are hyper-vulnerable to external shocks. A single change in international maritime law, a shift in tourism trends, or a rise in sea levels can be an existential threat. As the climate changes, they face the prospect of being the first nations in history to lose their entire territory to the ocean. When your entire country is only a few square miles, there is nowhere to retreat to. This brings us to the internal politics of these tiny jurisdictions. In a nation of 30,000 people, politics is personal. They remind us that the state is not just a collection of borders and armies, but a legal framework and a shared identity. As we move further into an era of digital borders and globalized trade, the lessons learned from these micro-jurisdictions, how to be small, flexible, and essential, might become more relevant than ever for the rest of us. At KyneAndCo, we believe that understanding these small-scale systems is the key to understanding the larger world. The way a tiny district manages its parks or its budget tells us more about the nature of power and governance than any sprawling empire ever could. The microstate isn't just a curiosity, it's a laboratory for the future of the nation-state. By looking closely at how the smallest among us survive, we gain a clearer picture of the fragile balance that keeps the entire global system standing. In the end, size isn't everything. It's about how you use the space you have.